Welcome to our Connect for Mailchimp video series. This quick video tip is going to help look at the difference between groups and segments to help your decision should you opt to utilize segmentation for your Connect for Mailchimp integration. Before we dive into groups versus segments, let's break down a couple of reasons to utilize segmentation in Mailchimp. Both groups and segments are options to break down your audience into more tangible subgroups. While you can do this with new audiences, the biggest benefit to using segmentation is that you do not need to purchase additional audiences for your constituency. This also gives you an option of configuring as many segments of your membership as you or your marketing team desire. Each audience does need to have its own merged IQA query. So if your subgroups need to have different data fields, you have a couple options. One, you can use separate audiences. You can create multiple audiences, or you can combine all of your merged data fields into a single IQA query for all of your segments. You don't need to use every field in the merged data IQA for each mailing. The key here is that each mailing list is created for a single audience, and your Connect for Mailchimp admin panel needs to use the same merged data IQA. I'll give you a look at it in a second. Of course, you can use the same merged data IQA for multiple audiences if you desire. So what does this all mean? A visual representation here of a configured admin panel. I've cropped out the mailing list IQA information just to focus on the audience and the merged data IQAs for this slide. The audience and the merged data IQAs do need to match, and that's kind of the key piece here. If you need a different merged data set, you'll need to set up a different audience, as we've done with the C Systems Global audience here. You can use the same merged data IQA for multiple audiences, which is also demonstrated in this screenshot. Now, let's look at this from the mailing list IQA side of things. While the audience and merged data needs to be the same, the mailing list and segmentation, in this example using groups and interest categories, should be different. For each audience, you can set up as many groups or segments as you'd like, but each needs to have a separate IQA and segmentation names. The examples here for the AKSIA audience has 4 different segments, and the SIA test has 3 different segments that are pointing this example out. And we'll get into examples of segmentations in a little bit. Now that we know how to set things up in the admin panel, let's get back to the differences between groups and segments. They are both set up the same in Rise. However, they do behave differently in Mailchimp, and you do need to choose one or the other. Groups allow users to select via the update preference link in their email which groups and or interest categories they'd like to subscribe to. This is great for marketing promotions or newsletters that your users can select which mailings they'd like to receive. Groups also provide an additional layer of nesting. You can define a group, and then the users would select the interest categories within that group. In Mailchimp, the groups look like this with the categories underneath. And when a user clicks on that update preferences link, they're presented with the options that they are able to choose. So this is the concept of utilizing groups. Segments are a little bit more limited by nature. With segments, the users are unable to select which segment they will receive. This is all managed entirely by your IQAs. The users do not have the ability to select which segments they would like to subscribe to via the Mailchimp interface. If you're using segments, when the update preferences link is displayed in the email, the only option for the user is to essentially update their email address. Basically, what this means is they're only able to unsubscribe from receiving emails from your Mailchimp account. There's also no nesting options like there is with groups, but you do need a segment code and a segment name in the admin panel. So now that we've seen how these are different in Mailchimp, here are a couple of examples just to kind of highlight how you might want to use segments, or maybe you want to use groups. And hopefully one of these will show you how your association intends to use Mailchimp so that you can make that decision for your association. Just a couple examples of committees or segments. If you're sending an email to your committees and users need to be an active member of that committee, and that's the determining factor of whether or not they are going to be sent the emails, that would be a utilization of segment. Chapters is another one. Depending on how your association uses chapters, if you have to be a member of the chapter to get this email, this letter, then you determine who is in that list via the mailing list IQA, and that's who is going to get the email. Other user-defined criteria here, this can really be across the board. If you have a field in IMIS that needs to be a certain value or set of values in order for someone to get the email, segments is your go-to. However, if your association uses Mailchimp a little bit differently, groups might be your answer. If you have a series of newsletters, for example, and anyone who wants to get this newsletter, let them choose which newsletter they want to receive. Again, groups is going to be your option. If your association sends emails out in certain flavors of issues, legislative issues, budgetary or financial issues, safety or education, just to name a couple of them off the top of my head, and a user can select 1 or 0 or all of them, issues kind of leads towards groups. Special interests. Each association is different, and this option will be drastically different depending on the type of association and your email audience. You know your people, and you know how you're talking to them via these emails, and with that information, hopefully these kind of examples give you an idea of, should we be using segments? Should we be using groups for our mailing list integration or our Mailchimp integration? A couple final notes: regardless of which route you go, the audience and the merge data IQA need to be the same. Also, each unique segment code and name need to match up with a unique mailing list IQA, or if you're using groups, each unique group and interest category combo need to match up with a unique mailing list IQA. Finally, one last note: if you do use groups, make sure that you set up your groups and your interests underneath them in such a way that it makes sense. A plan and a little bit of organization or structure will go a long way. Thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to send us a note at support@csystemsglobal.com.